Hey, good morning. So we're out here today in central London. We've come out on the Jubilee line because we're going to go to the Titanic Exhibition. Now, the closest tube station to the Titanic Exhibition is Canada Water. It is literally just in front of us. So you're talking about a 3 or 4 minute wait. Tickets for this are £27.40 for us today. The prices may vary depending on the day and whatnot that you come. If you come at a quieter time, it might be a little bit cheaper. You come at a busier time, school holidays or something like that, it might be a little bit more expensive, but it was £27.40 for us. So we're going to go inside and hopefully see some original artifacts from the Titanic. Obviously, probably the most famous ship in the world, sank in 1912 in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on its maiden voyage. Apparently there are over 200 artifacts in here, as well as some life-size recreations of areas on board the ship, so it should be pretty cool. One thing they have noted, you can get audio guides for the experience, which we would love to get. They say bring some headphones because the audio guide is actually on your phone. Pretty cool. You can rent an audio guide if you do forget to bring headphones. It's £3 per audio guide. I don't know if that's returnable or not, but just remember to bring your headphones because it's always nicer bringing your own headphones than using those, right? But if you do enjoy the video throughout, give us a thumbs up. I do appreciate it. It really does help us out a lot. And it'd be great if you could hit the subscribe button, bell icon to be notified when we post all new videos. Let's go and discover the secrets of the Titanic.
No, we have to go in through there.
Got photo opportunity as we come in. So here's the QR code. You scan this QR code and then you download everything to your phone. So we're here in the first room of the Titanic Exhibition. This is where the vision and the construction happens. So we've got a few plans here. We got a luggage tag from White Star Line. Holland and Wolff, these are the people that have built the Titanic. Now they built 3. They built the Olympic, the Titanic and the Britannica. The Olympic being first, Titanic second, Britannica being third. Until that fateful night. The image we've got here is the house in which the idea was conceived to build these 3 gigantic ships. Lord William Peary, one of the founders, one of the vision artists. So here in front of us we've got an original piece of the hull. We were just hearing in the audio guide that the metal for it is 2.5 centimetres thick, and the hull was joined together by 3 million rivets. As you can see down the front here. Which is pretty crazy. So a few more original items, postcards, launch memorabilia and things like that from the crew lines themselves, along with a packet of cigarettes. White Star Line tin box of cigarettes. Didn't really have packets then, it was tin boxes if you had the money. So here, image number 3 on our audio guide. You got a picture of the rear of the ship and the propellers, 3 of them, 2 3-pronged propellers. I believe they said they were 7 meters in diameter and weighed something like thousands of tons. It was ridiculous. The financier, JP Morgan. Recognise that name today? Pretty crazy. One of the interesting facts that we did here was this ship, JP Morgan financed, cost $10 million back in the 1910s, 1908 it started really, which is equivalent to, I think, 1,000 million euros, which, that's a lot of money. Showcase C, got a number of the original construction tools that would have been used at Holland and Wolff to construct the Titanic, along with a pack of playing cards. This apparently was a set of playing cards from one particular person, and that's all explained in the audio guide. Over here we got an image of the ship when it was first floated back in 1911, prior to finishing it off. And then we've got a number of other little bits and pieces. So just here we've got a replica of one of the watertight doors, the water seal doors, that were apparently making the ship unsinkable. They didn't have any lifeboat drills or anything like that because, as they said, it's an unsinkable ship, but that's not really possible. We've also got here one of the engines, 4 stories tall. You see this guy for comparison, it's crazy. So here we've got one of the original passenger manifests for the first class passengers, all approved by White Star Line on the 6th of June. So it's only actually sailing for 5 days, really, before that fateful night. Sailed away on April 10th and ultimately sunk on April 15th. It's pretty crazy. So here we've got an image taken at Southampton docks on April 10th when it sailed away. This is the first mate, William Murdoch. Got his telescope here with the engraving. Lieutenant William Murdoch. Here we've got the Great Lounge. This is where the first class passengers would have hung out, had conversation, had lunch, things like that, cups of tea. And then we've actually got the window as well. So that is circled over there on the far left. So this is an original. So we got a model of the ship here. Now on the other side it's actually open, so we go around there and show you some of the interior as well. So there's some of the third class cabins with the bunk beds. It's got some of the dining areas, more of the third class cabins. And then you've got all the first class just at the top as well. It's really cool that it's completely open and you can see kind of everything. Got an interesting fact here that I didn't know. So, came from Belfast down to Southampton, picked up more passengers in Cherbourg, went on to Queenstown, which is now Cork, and then sailed across the Atlantic before succumbing to the iceberg, the unsinkable ship, becoming sinkable. So we've got Robert Carlson here, one of the third class passengers immigrating from Europe to America. He got one of the postcards that he wrote here. They're just saying, unfortunately, his body was never found. Velan Oman, some of these are her belongings. She actually survived and got out. So we've got some more artefacts here from the people that you just saw in that image there. The cap from Sven Aldering. An ironically small box of Cadbury's chocolates. Cadbury's been around for years and years and years, and they're actually made in the UK, up in Birmingham, and we went to see the tour, so I'll put a link up in the top corner so you guys can see that. Really, really cool day out, but it's cool to see this back in 1912, a tin box of Cadbury's chocolates, but it's so small. So here we've got an original set of White Star Line silver dinner set. So you've got all the cutlery, it's all engraved. Ice cream dish, champagne bucket, everything you need really for a meal. That's much of what was to do on board Titanic in those days. You didn't have entertainment, you didn't have cinemas, billiard, you had billiards and things like that, but there wasn't the entertainment that we have today on a cruise line, so you spent your time eating. There was one other thing you could do on board, if you were first or second class anyway. You had your deck chairs ready for you on the top deck, so you could sit out and enjoy the sun. And here's one of those deck chairs. So it's still really well made. You got the little star right at the very top, That's the symbol of White Star Line. And then you've got a blanket as well, if you were a little bit cold. I can imagine it was quite cold on that transatlantic voyage in April. So here you've got the original idea for the Heart of the Ocean from Titanic, based kind of on a true story of a couple of lovers that were on board under false names. You've got the necklace given and the keys in a purse from Kate Phillips. This is one of the people that Titanic is kind of loosely based on. As we come over, you've also got the first class staircase. This is pictorial representation, obviously, not the actual staircase. But you'd have a glass and iron dome over the top that would shine the light in. So this was the pinnacle of royalty if you could walk down these stairs. So here you've also got an original piece of that first class staircase. Just a little bit of a cut off of it. This is a couple that unfortunately did not survive. They managed to get off the ship during the sinking, but they went onto one of the lifeboats and that sunk, unfortunately. She sank to the bottom of the ocean and then he died of hypothermia shortly later. We've got her ring here. And this was found in the lifeboat that's found drifting in the ocean after. So here we've got one of the third class cabins. You'll see the bunk beds with the White Star Line decoration on the blankets. So you're crammed in quite tightly, not a lot of space at all.
There's the meat. Where is Sven now?
Small porthole for light, that's it. And then a little sink to wash up in. But it's much different to our time on the Disney Magic, which by comparison today is quite a small ship as well. And I'll put a link up in the top corner so you can see our walkthrough of the cabin in there. We weren't third class passengers, but we definitely weren't first class, so you can see the difference. So here we've got the second class dining room. See all the mahogany chairs. 309 passengers, I believe they said, were able to be seated in there, around that figure. All these beautiful ornate chairs that you've got, which, funnily enough, we actually have one just here. So the base of the chair is missing compared to what it was before, but this was recovered from the bottom of the ocean, I believe, so things are bound to happen. So this is Alfred Norrie. He was one of the first class passengers on board. He did survive the ordeal. He managed to get into one of the lifeboats. He was sailing because apparently he got one of their housekeepers pregnant, so they sent him off to New York to start a new life. But over here he wrote on a postcard to say the Titanic has sunk, etc., describing the sinking and whatever happened. But as it turns out, he actually fell asleep, so he never saw it. So despite him saying everything he said in the postcard, he never actually saw it. You've got, again, a number of artefacts. First class watch, Bible, and a saucer. So over here you've got a number of the third class floor tiles. You've got a menu for third class passengers, and then a couple of spoons as well. They believe this is one of the first pieces that was actually discovered back in 1981. It was caught in a fishing net just off the Irish coast, so that's quite interesting as well. So here we're walking through a replica of the first class corridor. You see it's very ornate in comparison to third class. really quite ornate. So here we've got one of the first class cabins. Now this is one of the larger first class cabins. So you had 2 bedrooms, essentially a living room, bathroom, things like that. The gentleman that had this cabin, or this style of cabin, paid an equivalent. He paid £512 along with a number of shillings, which is equivalent to about 80,000 today, which is pretty crazy. But he did have cabins for his servants as well. So you can get yourself a sofa, table, everything that you could possibly want. So as we come over here, we also see some of the cutlery, the utensils, the crockery, and all things like that that you would have had in your first class cabin. Very, very intricate menu holder with the white Star Line logo on it. First class napkin rings. A lot better than the third class peasant cabin. So this is one of the first class a la carte restaurants that you had. See at the top, you've got the lamps. This is a replica. This is from the Olympic, but they're essentially the same. So this is another one of the first class cabins, highly intricately decorated. You see some of the carvings and things like that. Some of the furniture, very, very ornate. Really well decorated. Obviously they wanted to charge a lot of money for these first class cabins, so they needed to be decorated really well. And then this is one of the wooden panellings that would have been on board the ship at the time. So as you can see how intricately carved the wood is, with the little face there right at the top. So here we've got Henry Vilna. He unfortunately died that fateful night, but they did recover his body a few years later, where it was sent to Halifax so he could be buried. You've got the original pocket watch belonging to the second class Henrik Winkler, and also an original list of the second class passengers. You do have one of the second class cups and saucers that was on board again. You've got the White Star Line logo printed there right in the middle. So here you've got one of the most famous couples on board, Isidore and Ida Strauss. Now these guys, Isidore in particular, he was the founder of Macy's department store. Very famous. These guys actually died on board the Titanic. She refused to get into a lifeboat, saying that they'd been together so long, wherever he goes, she goes. So they were last seen on the top deck in a deck chair, where they unfortunately died. So here we've got a replica of the plaque that was erected outside Macy's department store after the death of Isidore Strauss. So here we've got one of the gentlemen that was on board. Unfortunately this gentleman, he died, Victor Penasco. But we do have some of his belongings here. We've got his tuxedo, which in my opinion kind of looks like pyjamas. It's very silky. Along with a case of his as well. And this here is a telegram sent by the Spanish embassy regarding the couple, Victor Penasco and his wife. His parents didn't know he was on board, he never told them. So here you see in this image a second class cabin. Now, you were still sharing a little bit there, you didn't have your own actual facilities, but you did have a bit of a wash basin and things like that, which you can see over here. Kind of a vanity cabinet, wash basin situation. Chamber pot, so you can do your business. But it's amazing that this has survived, that they managed to recover this. So here you've got an image of some of the workers in the steam room. They had 29 coal fires, so they'd be baking. And then you've also got a piece of coal that they recovered from bunker 1, which is pretty crazy. Look at the size of that piece of coal. Thomas Knowles here, one of the only surviving crew members from that night. Along with a number of his belongings, where the manifests of every ship that he was on, along with some of his belongings. So here you've got the Kink family on the left hand side. One of the only third class families to survive. Women and children were being put on the boats, the lifeboats, but men weren't. The father actually dived over. Everybody landed in the boat as it was going down, so they're pretty intact, the family. So this photo in particular was taken when they arrived in New York, one of the first photos taken. And as you can see, she's got her shoes on there. And these are her shoes just here, along with her blanket as well. There's also an image here of the iceberg, potentially the iceberg that actually did sink the Titanic. This was taken 36 hours before the Titanic in that kind of vicinity, so they believe that this may be one of the shots of the iceberg that did sink it. So here you've got a representation of what happened that night, how the icebergs came about. The icebergs themselves came off of some of the ice caps up in the north, and then as the Titanic is sailing through the northern Atlantic, they can't see the iceberg essentially until the very last second. So they begin to turn, but not fast enough. As you can see, you only see a small fraction of what is there. And it takes out the side of the ship, massive gash. And that's where it goes. And then we all know what happens next because we've seen the film. So the idea that they're saying here, following on from the video that we watched, they're saying this will give you an idea of how it was to be in that icy water, so see how long you can touch it. So we can only do 5 seconds before it gets too much. We want to pull our hand away, so you can imagine how people felt being in the water all night. 25 minutes I think they said you could probably survive, and that was it. So here we've got a reenactment of the radio telegraph room on board the Titanic. So this would be where they communicate to the land and things like that. You've got the Morse code there. You've got some tubes where you'd be sending messages between floors and decks. So this is where the desperate call would have been sent from. So this is the orchestra members from the first class orchestra. They just continued playing as the ship went down. They didn't try and survive, they didn't do anything, they just carried on playing for everyone to try and keep them calm as the ship is going down. And here you've got some of the sheet music from on board. This in Swedish. So here you've got an image of how the lifeboat should have been. Originally they were supposed to have double the amount, but the company wanted to have wider walkways, so they abandoned that idea, went with half of it, and hence more people died, unfortunately. So this is an image of the Carpathian. This was the main ship that rescued passengers after the disaster of the Titanic. The gentleman that heard the signal was actually due to go to bed. He did go to bed, decided he needed to send a couple more telegrams, so turned it back on, and then he heard the distress signal, which is pretty crazy. It's very lucky that he did turn that back on, because otherwise basically everybody would have perished. So here we've got a couple of newspapers, the New York Times and the Boston Daily Globe, with different representations of the tragedy. The New York Times has gone with around 1250 people perishing, and the Boston Daily Globe has gone with around 1500 people perishing. So quite a different account of what's happened there. Now bear in mind these were basically the next day, so they didn't know the full story as they're reporting it. So here in the penultimate room we see a number of images from the wreckage itself of the Titanic, front of the ship. Here we've also got a replica of the wreckage. It was believed that it would have survived mostly intact because of the depth it was and things like that, but ultimately there's a lot of organisms at the bottom of the ocean, so as you can see, it did not. So here's some footage of when the Titanic was actually discovered, the wreckage of the Titanic. It was discovered on the 1st of September 1985, so it took them 83 years to discover. Here's a deck bench that was brought up from the wreckage as well. And then you've also got a 50% replica of one of the propellers, one of the three propellers that you had. So this would have been the port starboard propeller, as the one in the centre had 4 prongs to it. So this was the port or starboard side. Unfortunately, here in the final room, you've got the record of everybody that died that night on board. It's very sad how many people actually did die. You can see there's more third-class passengers as there were more of them. What a fantastic experience that was. I absolutely love the story of Titanic. The tragedy of the Titanic even. 5 days sailing. You know, you spend $10 million at that time on a ship. You have it sail for only 5 days, technically. Obviously, I understand it came from the dockyard to actually do its maiden voyage. And then, you know, 1,500 people die. It's tragic, it really is tragic. It was very sad going in there at the end and seeing all the names listed of the people that did unfortunately perish on board that night or in the sea after the ship sunk. But they made some grave errors when they were doing it. They just didn't have enough lifeboats, they didn't think it was sinkable, various things. So that was kind of bound to happen. It's karma, fate. You're tempting fate by not having the lifeboats. But yeah, definitely a cool experience. Come out here and check it out. I'll put a link down in the description to the tickets so you guys can go and see. We did buy ourselves a programme as well, which was £12. But it's a pretty cool looking programme actually. So we're going to read up on a bit more information. The audio guide was absolutely fantastic as well. So much information. And seeing all those individual little pieces of artifacts, memorabilia, things like that was really cool to see, that they've been recovered or they've washed up on shore somewhere around the world as well. One thing we weren't particularly keen on, I don't like it when they do this, they kind of they take your photo at the beginning but then they print it off for you at the end, rather than just letting you see it on a monitor or something. I think having it on a monitor would be a little bit better because then you're not needlessly printing off all these images that people may not necessarily buy, but some places do it like that, unfortunately. For children, it may not be the best experience. It's very quiet in there with your headphones in and listening to the audio guide, getting all that information in. It may not be good at grabbing children's attention. Obviously, if you're 10 years old, the tragedy of the Titanic happened, you know, 100 years ago, so do you care about it so much? If you've seen the film, you know, as an adult now, as you're a little bit older, you do enjoy that, but there is a lot to take in, so if you're a child, maybe not the best experience for you. If you did enjoy the video, give us a thumbs up. I do appreciate it. It really does help us out a lot. It'd be great if you could hit that subscribe button and bell icon to be notified when we post all new videos. We'll see you on the other side. Thanks.